SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
On the latest episode of iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, Ted Menmuir, SBC's content director, is joined by Jake Pollard to discuss an amendment in France that would have regulated the country's online casino market. However, as news travels fast in this sector, since the recording of the episode, news broke over the weekend that the French government has withdrawn the budget amendment. The decision was announced by Budget Minister Laurent Saint-Martin, who stated that further consultations were needed to avoid the negative impacts and job losses warned by regional stakeholders. Though postponed, the government retains the mandate to review online casino laws with potential future measures focusing on tax generation, land-based protections, and harm reduction. Despite the setback, Ted and Jake's discussion still remains relevant as they consider the potential impact of regulating the online casino market in France, which is currently the only EU member state, apart from Cyprus, not to have a regulated iCasino sector. So, with that, today's episode will still run this interview, and Ted, take it away.
iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 marketing and CRM solution for the global iGaming market. I'm Ted Menmuir, and joining me today is SBC's French market correspondent, Jake Pollard. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Ted, and I'm very happy to be on the line with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and congrats on breaking this news story and bringing it to iGaming audiences' minds. And if we can just begin by recapping the latest developments and what has led to France finally being able to legislate a future framework for online casinos.
Okay, so, this week's news is, as you mentioned, a major development for France and its online gaming industry. As has been mentioned a number of times, the country is the last major Western European market to not have regulated online casino. And the prospect of it happening is therefore a major change and a positive one for most stakeholders. I say most, obviously, with some forethought as to what we're going to be discussing later on in this episode. But in short, really, if you could summarize it very quickly from the government's point of view, the key consideration is money. Michel Barnier, the new Prime Minister, has looked under the bonnet, which is something the UK listeners might be familiar with, an expression they'll be familiar with, and has found that the state needs to reduce its debt levels, raise revenues considerably in order to be able to boost, investment, economic growth, and make French people feel like they have, higher purchasing power and so on and so forth. So those really are the major motivations behind this latest move. I think maybe one of the key issues would be the suddenness with which it's happened. But again, necessity, the need to move quickly is probably the reason behind that.
Okay, so Jake, that's very unromantic. Just the tax and money, but let's kind of recap and please remind audiences why France has to date kind of upheld a fragmented marketplace in terms of iGaming.
Okay, fine. I'll try and include a bit of French romance in that. No, I'm kidding. No, the reason online casino is still not regulated at this point in time anyway really dates back to 2010 when France regulated its online sports betting and online poker sectors. Basically, at the time, the land-based casinos feared that regulating online casino would mean that they would be unable to compete against the pure online players of the day. So whether that's, at the time, was it Party Casino, PokerStars, and all those types of casinos, pure online players. So in short, this has led to the development of really a major illegal, unregulated online casino market in France over the past 14 years. And on the one hand, you've had online sports betting, which has really driven the sector really over that time and has done, pretty well, really, especially considering the high taxes in the country. But this has also led, as I said, to a substantial unregulated online casino market. And during that time, while this unregulated market has developed, stakeholders of all shapes and sizes really have been calling for the regulation of online casino, although, of course, with different formats according to their strategic aims and to what would help them either corner the market or give them some kind of competitive advantage.
Yeah. So one thing, like reading back on all your kind of correspondence with SBC is that, 2024 has been kind of a make or break year for French gambling. And what's kind of leading this seismic transformation for French gambling?
It really is a mixture of there's a few key components in those. So just with regards to the online gambling industry, really one of the big changes in France, even though it's a very, very really tiny section of the kind of online gaming sector, during 2023 and into 24, France regulated what they call journal, which is basically NFT, Web3 NFT, crypto-backed fantasy gaming products. And that was a major issue because what was happening is you had, on the one hand, you had the land-based casinos who were lobbying for one form of online casino regulation. You also had the online operators such as BetClick and Winamax via the trade body AFGEL also lobbying for a totally open market. None of those were successful last year, but this journal law called the so-called So Rare law, after the name of the fantasy betting company, basically was pushed through by the government. There was one issue as it kind of put into contrast, why are these companies being given, according to some stakeholders, preferential treatment, while other sectors which weigh much more heavily on the economy were not. Then over the last, over the past year, it's been making the news, but really since 2019 and the privatization of Française des Jeux, the company, which is maybe Europe's largest lottery, I think, or number 2 in Europe. So, big player by any standard.
Is the largest, yeah.
Yeah. So, a big player by any standard has been basically building up its M&A chest, being aggressive on the corporate front, on the M&A and corporate strategic front. And really that has come to fruition, if you like, over the last 18 months. So we've had the acquisition of ZEturf for 150 million, Premier Lotteries Ireland, I think, for 350 million, and of course, most recently, Unibet parent company Kindred Group for 2.6 billion euros. So that mixture of regulatory changes and very strong M&A activity by its leading company FDJ, by France's leading gambling company FDJ, have really kind of driven the transformations in the market over the past 18 months, but really it's been even longer, really, if you look at it through the underlying trends that have been active in the market over the last 3 to 4 years, really.
Mm-hmm. So as online casino comes on the horizon for French gambling, who are kind of the cast of figures in how that market will be arranged, and how do you kind of see them? What are the narratives for these companies, and where do they want to pitch the market at? If you could start with FDJ.
Yeah, sure. I mean, FDJ, there is no denying nothing really happens without FDJ's, explicit or not so explicit say so, if I may say. They are by any, as we said, Europe's largest lottery, the biggest gambling group in France, a major economic driver for the government as well in terms of tax revenues. I can't remember the exact figures, but it's not far off 4 or 5 billion euros they generate in revenues for the government. So FDJ will be there, and obviously now with Kindred, they have really all the tools at their disposal to really go after market share. Secondly, of course, the government is a major player. And one of the key changes, I guess, with Barnier's government compared to the previous one is that Barnier has moved very quickly. they've looked. Obviously, they need to raise revenues, but they've looked at the situation. He knows it obviously from his time as EU Commissioner for Internal Market and Services, so he has some familiarity with the sector, and they've decided to move quickly, and that is a notable change without a doubt. ANJ, the Autorité Nationale des Jeux, the regulator, is also going to be a major stakeholder in terms of how it regulates, the format in which it chooses to regulate, and how it drives this policy forward. Overall, I would say, most stakeholders seem to have a good relation with ANJ from what I have seen, and I would expect some, a good level of regulation from ANJ. Then, of course, you have the online operators, AFGEL. So AFGEL is their trade body. So we're talking BetClick, Winamax, obviously FDJ, Kindred now, even though bit of a different situation now, they're part of FDJ, but PMU, NetBet, and all those companies are in there. And notably, this format that has been put forward by the French government, is really what they have always been asking for. So open competition from day one, no need to be tethered to a land-based casino, as has been the case in Switzerland, I think in Belgium, and of course in some US states. So there's that. In addition, and finally, last but certainly not least, you have Casino de France, who are the trade body for the 200 land-based casinos, or for most of them anyway, in the country. So we're talking Barrière, Joie Group, Partouche, so those kinds of those are the biggest ones, so to speak. And they will be lobbying and really pushing for some kind of different format of regulation than the one that has just been announced this week, because they are saying that they completely left at a disadvantage when if it goes forward, and also they say that they will lose something like 30% of market share and revenues in the process, which could lead to something like 15,000 jobs being lost. The important thing, just to on that front, it's especially for the smaller resorts. So the big ones like in Deauville, Monaco, and elsewhere are not going to have a problem surviving. They will carry on, but it's all the small ones dotted around the country's thermal spa towns, which really, only are really truly active during the summer high season. But that revenue generates a lot of income for their communities and for their local authorities. So that will be there's going to be a lot of heavy discussions over the next few months between them and the government.
But I don't want to tail off, but one of your observations is just how kind of stakeholder-centric French legislation is for any market. I mean, can you kind of explain that, as in that's how France processes laws compared to other Western markets?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, I guess the key issue in France is, I guess the one major difference between France and other European markets is really the land-based casinos. I don't know of any other European country that has as many land-based casinos in its country, within its borders. I mean, you look at Italy, there's just a few, if I'm not mistaken. You look at Switzerland, it's kind of, there's not many. So France has this particular situation, and also one of the mandated aims of any legislation when it comes to gambling is what they call to keep a balance between all the different subsectors. So whether it's horse racing, casino, lottery, and so on. And so that always has to be taken into account when looking at regulatory changes in the country. As I mentioned, the land-based casinos really are up in arms because from their point of view, they're talking about a loss of 500 million euros in tax revenues, which, when you compare it to what the government has forecast in terms of tax revenues from online casino regulation, they've forecast €1 billion. So the land-based casinos are saying already half of that is going to be lost by us. So it'll be like kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul nearly kind of thing. Plus also, if there are job losses, you're talking major social costs, as well as, literally the viability of some of those very small communes, which really are not 100%, but in large part financially supported by the casinos in their communes, in their districts. So all those things come into play, and stakeholders are massive. Whether it's horse racing, which generates close to 800 million euros a year for the stakeholders. You've got Française des Jeux, and all of them have their interests. The one issue, and it's similar in the UK, is no one moans if taxes are raised on gambling companies. And the recent news from a couple of weeks ago that France was going to increase taxes to subsidize the social security system is part of that, and those will be added on to the proposed taxes on online casinos once they are regulated, or if they are regulated.
Okay. Yes. So I think let's move on to kind of the realities that are kind of present in the market. And the government is going to seek to apply a 27% tax charge on online casino GGR. That kind of takes it to real kind of business income tax rate of plus 50%. How do you think that kind of shapes up the market's dynamics and then the market's appeal?
Yeah, I mean, of course, France is known for its high taxes, and I mean, all the contacts have had the same reaction as, "Oh my God, is that the level of taxation that's going to be applied to the products?" Clearly, it's not ideal. But having said that, high taxes are a fact of life for gambling. I mean, we've seen as you know, in Holland, I think they're going to raise it in the next couple of years to close to 38%. I think, the UK, there's a likelihood that it might happen in the UK as well. I mean, you can see it in New York. New York has 51% of GGR tax, but operators are still present there. And so, the thing is taxes are going to be high. I think in total, when you add the 27.8% tax, GGR tax on online casinos, plus the social security measures, it totals around 56% of GGR tax. So it is substantial. But I guess, that's the system they use. And I guess their arguments would be, it's a big market. It's, nearly 65, 70 million residents. It has a strong history in casino, and operators will be coming forward, I believe, to get licenses because the market is there, and you can still generate profits and margins even off those numbers.
But previously covering the French market, and yes, with online casino restrictions, I mean, this has definitely been a factor that's impeded the competitive makeup to grow. So how do you think that will change post iCasino legislation? Do you expect more market entrants, or does it really kind of change the makeup of French gambling as it stands now?
I mean, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, to start with, obviously, casino is much more profit generating than online sports betting. The margins are stronger. It's not so reliant on that issue, and also it doesn't rely on sports results as well so much, which can be upsetting for the operators sometimes. But it's personally, I think there will be an influx of companies coming through because look, I mean, we can look at Brazil, for example. As a market that's about to launch regulated iGaming. There's nearly 95 or 100 companies that have either applied or been or obtained their licenses.
Yeah, I think it's up to 99 there.
Yeah, that's it. So I think companies will look at the market and just do their sums and think this is a major opportunity in the sense of a major market opening up, which nowadays is certainly a rarity, certainly in Europe. So yeah, and again, like I said, online casino generates more margins and profits for operators, so it will be in that regard, I guess, a bit more attractive for brands. But also, we don't know what's going to happen. That many things can change in terms of whether it's the lobbying, whether it's some of the conditions the government introduces, they might be more flexible or amenable to some of the demands from the land-based casinos. So, will there be some kind of, I don't know, it can be either some kind of revenue split with them. Do online operators need to be tethered in any way to a land-based establishment? So there are various conditions and terms that might come in that, we have to be ready to kind of look at and take into account, I guess.
So, Jake, great reporting on France. And how do you see kind of the short-term developments panning out, and who are you kind of keeping your eye out to see whether kind of this legislation progresses?
Yeah, so I mean, the next steps really in terms of legislation are they will be debated in Parliament over the next 3 months, over Q4. And really, in theory, if everything, so to speak, if things go according to the government's plans, they will pass this by Christmas time, basically. And so all the terms, conditions, framework systems will be outlined in the government's legislative text. And then, to get organized, to put all that in motion, to put all the systems together, to get all the regulatory surveillance / monitoring systems together, would be about another 6 months. So most optimistic scenario, we could be talking regulated online casino by the middle of next year. But if not, you're talking really, we're talking early 2026, really, if not after that, if it's not happening. So within the next 6 to 12 months, it should be happening. The important, another just kind of detail is that, this is an amendment to what they call the Projet de loi de finances, which is their budget. So, and the government has introduced it. It's not been introduced by MPs. Do you see what I mean? So I guess there is support from high up in the government for this, even if it might seem to some observers, or some of those observers have said that it seems that it's been rushed in terms of lack of consideration for land-based casinos and so on and so forth. But in theory, it does come from the government itself, so should carry weight. And because it's part of the bigger budget law, there are more possibilities. It's highly likely that it should pass. So that's the kind of near future for it.
Yeah, you kind of answered my final question on that, where I was going, why should all stakeholders look at that? But I'm going to ask you like a personal question here, and it's like, from your reporter's take and your reporter's eye, what kind of caveat do you really want to send to audiences to know about the French market, and why it will essentially be different to any market that we've seen in Europe?
Sure. I mean, yeah. Look, France is. I think listeners will know that France has its own peculiarities in terms of the way the government does business, the way companies do business as well. There are certain. They may have different approaches to what we might be used to in the UK, kind of thing. I think, personally speaking, I think stakeholders are optimistic now, are truly optimistic, because before, I reported on the Jade project from the land-based casinos last year. I reported extensively on that. And even though there was hope there was never government backing for it. And there were one or two MPs who came out in favor of it, but the government never really backed it. So from that point of view, most stakeholders seem to be quite optimistic. While obviously there are some caveats in terms of lobbying that's going to be going on in the next few months. But really, it's like I said, it's the last major Western European market to be doing this, and that alone is, from a business perspective, is very interesting. I think also, the fact that, the fact that it's been so long is a truly, I guess, momentous change, you could call it. It's a big change in the system. But as the ANG president, Isabelle Falque-Pierrotin, once mentioned, she said, it's always the danger between balancing, something that presents more risks of problem gambling and addiction with regulating it, getting it taxed, getting revenues from it. And it's always about trying to find that balance, and the balance between all the verticals in the country, which is, the official aim of the government, which is the stated mandated aim of the government. So those are the things to take into consideration. Some people are looking to sell up and cash in. Some people will be looking to do partnerships. Some people will be, looking for investment. Exciting times, I guess, in a way. It's going to be very active. You can never predict the future, so let's not be overconfident, but it does look promising.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the few positives of European gaming in this year. So, Jake, thanks a lot for that very in-depth drill down on the French market. And as always, you'll be reporting on this for SBC. So thanks so much. I'm sure we're going to have you back on board soon.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.